being here this afternoon, and start by saying that I do acknowledge that folks are feeling like we have not had the chance to share enough information, and so I want to acknowledge that that's the feeling not only of some of the media, but certainly of some of the residents as well. And frankly, that's why we're here today, and that's why City Manager Clucky and I are here, is to provide a bit of an update as to where things stand right now in the City of Hamilton. But before I welcome the team more formally, I do have something to share with you, which is that Hamiltonians need to know that the City of Hamilton has not paid a ransom. So that's a question that keeps coming up, and I just want to let folks know that that's not the case. We have not paid a ransom. And I'm sure that you can all appreciate, however, that we can't get into a lot of detail about that at this moment in time, but I thought it was important to let folks know that that's the case. And I do want to formally thank the people that have joined us today. Fire Chief Dave Cunliffe, Deputy Chief Hamilton Police Services Ryan Diodati, and Deputy Chief Paul Hamilton, Deputy Chief Hamilton Paramedic Services Russell Crocker, and of course our Chief Digital Officer Cyrus Tarani, and as I've already mentioned, Marnie Clucky, our City Manager, who's gotten a baptism by fire, certainly, as our new City Manager for our city. You know, it's often in the conversation in our city around transparency, and it's something that has been mentioned that through the election campaign and regularly, that transparency is really important, and that's something that I believe in as well. Transparency is extremely important, and so we're here to provide all of the details that we possibly can, while being careful to continue to protect the interests of the residents of our city. So there's no doubt that we are still in an active situation, and so we have to make sure that we're protecting the interests of our residents. But we are at a stage where we can share more, and of course the first thing was that in fact we have not paid a ransom. But we are also in a situation where we're kind of shifting gears, if you will. So initially, the effort, the attention, the focus was on containing the breach. Other language was used in the past, like putting a sandbox around the situation, containing the breach, making sure that that we prevented any further damage from happening. And now what we're doing is we're kind of transitioning to another phase. We are going into a phase that we're calling the rebuilding phase, or the recovery phase. And so that's important to note. We've successfully contained the breach, and now rebuilding and restoring our IT systems is where we're at. And that's something that I know is extremely important to people. And I know that people are wondering also, how long is that going to take? It's going to be some time. I mean, these things don't happen overnight, as you can well imagine, but I do want you to know that folks are working, these folks, as well as so many others, are working day in and day out to gradually get all of our services back online. And so that's I guess we call it a work in progress. It's an ongoing effort, but all of the focus is now on that. City Manager Clucky is going to give a few more details on what we know momentarily, but I really want to say that based on everything that we know at this moment, residents can be assured that their personal information has not been compromised. I know folks have been worried about their personal information. Councillors have shared with me that they're getting calls and folks are asking them questions about personal information. Our experts and our team, all of the folks that are working on this, are diligently working to ensure that folks' personal information, their personal data, is not compromised, and that it is actually being protected. So on that note, I'm going to ask City Manager Clucky for some remarks, but this is really an opportunity also for folks to ask questions. So when City Manager Clucky is done, then we'll be answering your questions. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you, Mayor Horvath. Our primary focus now is safely and securely getting services up and running again. I want to start by thanking the community for your patience and understanding. And I also want to thank staff who have really stepped up and have been working day and night to find creative solutions to get services running. We were hit nearly 3 weeks ago, and I know there are unanswered questions in the community about where we are at and what comes next. Once we detected the cyber attack, we enacted our incident response plans. We took services and systems offline to protect systems as much as we could, and we engaged experts and key partners who helped us to navigate and respond. For some services, we had to move to do things old school, and we shifted to do some manual operations and to continue delivering services to the public. And we continue to adjust and refine our service delivery. Now we are restoring and rebuilding our systems and processes, and this work will include testing and confirming any systems that we bring online can do so safely. The goal is to make more city services available as quickly and as safely as possible. And as part of our strategy, we have deployed enhanced monitoring tools throughout our network so that we can gain additional visibility and take steps to harden and become more resilient so it's more difficult for cyber criminals to penetrate our system. And I'll reiterate a few things because I think it's important, and these are questions that are top of mind for people. But based on our cyber experts' forensic analysis, at this time we have no evidence that personal data has been accessed or compromised. And if we find otherwise, we will let folks know right away. We have an obligation to do so, and we want to do so. The city's data was encrypted, but again, there is no evidence to suggest that the personal data was removed from the systems and that it's compromised. Also, a ransom was demanded. And as the mayor said, and I want to repeat, the city did not pay it. Okay, so all that said, the city of Hamilton is running and it is open for business. So I'm going to go through a few things that are functioning and where we have some gaps still. First responders, like our fire, paramedics, and police, are still responding to calls. So people are being attended to. Long-term care homes are operating, and all aspects of care are being provided to our loved ones. Trash, recycling, organics, they're all still being picked up, and transfer stations are open and accepting all forms of payment. We are still providing safe, clean drinking water to homes and businesses. Traffic signals are still working, and we are paying our vendors as quickly as we can. We've also had questions about paying employees, and that is very important to us. We have been able to pay employees their base pay, and staff have been working again around the clock to find ways to ensure that they can be paid overtime and standby pay, and happy to report that that will begin at the next full pay cycle. So we were down for a couple of weeks in terms of overtime, but we have found a way to work around that. There are still many city phone lines down, but the customer contact center is operational and able to take calls from 546 City, and all of our municipal service centers are open to the public and ready to assist. So you can still get marriage licenses, taxi scripts and prestos, burn permits, and more. As I said, some of those things are more manual. We've had to do things old school, but it's still available. Recreation centers, senior centers, arenas, and golf courses, they're all operational citywide. March break camps still operated, and the Springtide Bulb Show at the Gage Park Greenhouse is all running as planned this week. And you can still get building permits and road permits. You just have to do it slightly differently right now. You have to come in to the counters, or you have to email applications rather than using the online portal. I wish I could tell you that this is going to be a quick fix, but these incidents take a long time to recover from. But we will restore services progressively over time, step by step. Some IT systems will come back online sooner than others, and some can take weeks or months. What has happened here is it's awful, but cyber criminal attacks are becoming more and more frequent, so it's really a lesson for all of us. Believe me, we are taking this very seriously, and we will take a hard look to see where we can make further improvements. We will analyze and provide a full report at the end of this of what happened and what we have done to prevent it from happening again. So I want to reiterate again that we're committed to serving Hamiltonians and doing all we need to do to make sure our systems and information are protected, and we're committed to keeping people informed and working to keep everything up and running to the best of our ability. So I'll reminder that for the latest updates and information, you can visit the city's website. We update it daily, and we will try to inform the public in this way as frequently as possible moving forward. So thank you. We will turn it over for questions.
Thank you, City Manager Clucky and Mayor Horvath. We will now go to members of the media for questions. We will begin with one question and one follow-up. If time permits, we will do a second round of questions. For media partners attending here in person, we will ask you to speak loudly so our partners joining us virtually can hear your questions as well. With that, our first media partner is Tevia Morrow from Hamilton Spectator. Tevia, please go ahead.
I guess I'll focus on the demand. It's going to be a multi-pronged question, so I'll try to...
Oh, wait, I brought a pen.
Okay.
I was ready for you, Tevia. I brought my pen.
Great. Can you tell us what the demand was, and what was the, I guess, calculus that was taken to decide not to pay the demand, and does this necessarily mean that the city won't pay demand in the future? It seems like this is an ongoing situation.
Very good multi-pronged question, and I thank you for it. Look, the demand was a whole hell of a lot of money. I can tell you that. We can't be very specific because we don't want to be putting the city in a position where the bad actors that we're dealing with, these cyber criminals, or copycats for that matter, get information that would then put us at further risk. And I know that frustrates people, but that's the reality. It was a huge ask. We have not paid it, but this continues to be an ongoing incident. It's not over yet. And yes, we're now looking at rebuilding and getting back on our feet in terms of our systems, but those bad guys are still out there.
I'll have a follow-up. I'm interested in the fact that data was encrypted, but no evidence that has been accessed or released to the evil dark web or whatever. So if it's been encrypted, does that mean that the city still doesn't have access to that particular data? That it has not paid the ransom, has not received a key to get it back? If you could just walk us through that a little bit.
Sure, and I don't know if Marnie, or sorry, if your city manager or if our chief digital officer would be better to answer that question, but certainly that's something that was mentioned by the city manager, that it is the case that there's been an encryption, and that's why we're doing all of that work on our side to get everything back online as an organization. But let's hear from Marnie.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll start and then turn it over to Cyrus if we need a more technical answer. So the data is encrypted, so we can't access that data. We do, however, have systems in place and backups that we will look at to seek to restore after cleaning it safely and putting it into a safe environment. That's the restoration and rebuilding we spoke about. However, just because your data is encrypted doesn't mean it can be accessed by the outside world. So all evidence at this point, and based on what our cyber experts are telling us, is that while it's encrypted, it hasn't been removed from the organization, it hasn't been taken, and therefore it hasn't been compromised in that way. It does still pose a challenge, of course, because we have to reinstate that, and we have to get that data back, and we have to get our systems up and running, and that's what our folks are focused on right now. I'm going to look at Cyrus and see if he wants to add to that, or... Okay.
Thank you, City Manager Clucky. We'll now go to Al Sweeney from CHCH. Al, if you have a question, please go ahead.
Yes, thanks. Hi.
Hi, Al.
Can you tell us anything about the cyber criminals themselves, like where they were operating from or anything like that?
So these folks operate in all kinds of different places. I don't have information about where specifically these folks are from. I don't think any of us have that specific information because it's all kind of cyber, right? It's all cyber. And what we've always been clear to do is to make sure that we're doing everything that we need to do as a Canadian municipality to make sure international laws are respected as well.
So if I could ask a
Sure.
follow-up question.
Sure.
the cyber attack is still going on. It's not over. Is that the case? I'm just
Well,
can you explain that?
so-
Have you just sort of sealed it off in one area and it'll just sit there forever or something?
Well, I don't know if that's better for Cyrus to answer, but the point is that this is an ongoing situation. It's an ongoing situation, and that's why when City Manager Clucky talked about making sure that we are getting our systems back online in ways that are maybe not bulletproof, but as close to bulletproof as we can get. That's why, because we want to make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen again, and that as we rebuild, we're rebuilding stronger. But I don't know, Cyrus, did you want to make a comment about that?
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Cyrus Strani, Chief Digital Officer.
Well, nice and loud for us, please, Cyrus. Thank you.
Yeah, so to answer your question, obviously, we contained the situation as quickly as we could, and from a containment perspective, we're satisfied that there is no additional damage occurring to our systems. We acted very quickly as part of our incident response plans to contain any damage that was occurring due to the cyber activity and the cyber criminals being in our systems. Once we had that containment down, we then started to look at our analysis, our forensics, and also how we start to prioritize the rebuild of our systems. And it's not like on a switch where you just go turn it back on. You have to go through a forensic process, you have to go through a hardening process, you have to go through a detailed review process as you want to bring each of those systems individually back up safely and ensuring that there's no persistent threat activity in our environments going forward. So the initial focus again was on 100% containment. You want to act quickly, you want to contain and make sure that you're minimizing the damage that the criminals are inflicting on your systems.
Are they
Thank you.
still attacking?
No.
Thank you, Cyrus. We'll now go to Scott Bradley from 900 CHML. Scott, you can go ahead.
I want to go back to the personal data question, and you've touched on a few times how you believe it's safe. And I'm wondering how you believe it's safe, or on what reason you believe it's safe, because if they've encrypted it, they've seemingly had some ability to touch it. So is it just that the hackers have not made a demand on that data that you're basing that it's safe, or is there some other more solid reason that they have not copied and pasted it instead of removing it or something?
No, that's a very fair question, and of course I'm a layperson, so I'm going to do my best, and then I'm going to ask the cleanup crew here to fix what I said. But my understanding is, as Cyrus was describing, we've contained the threat. So yes, it's encrypted, but from what we've been able to determine thus far, there's no evidence that it's been removed. And as Cyrus said, I mean, we're going through in detail all of the pieces now, and should that change in terms of people's personal information, we have an obligation to, and you can bet your bottom dollar, no pun since we're talking about ransom, but you can bet your bottom dollar that we would disclose immediately if that was the case. That's our obligation, it's our responsibility, and we need to do that.
I'm not an IT guy, so is removed the same as copied? Could they copy it instead of removing it and still have access to that information, or would they have to remove it only to be able to see it?
So
Close to the microphone, sir, please.
Thank you. So we're working closely. We have very skilled cyber experts that are doing that forensic analysis. They have means to understand and look at how data enters and leaves our systems, and they turn no stone unturned. So based on those professionals that are supporting us in our forensic analysis, to date, they have found no evidence through their forensic methods that they use to analyze our systems and looking at data flows to indicate that data has been exfiltrated from our systems. And Marnie mentioned that, City Manager Marnie, exfiltrated mean that signs or forensic signs that data left our system. So to date, the forensic experts are telling us they have not found indication that would show data leaving our system. In terms of the encryption, those are often automated processes that run within our system. It's not someone sitting there going, encrypt A, encrypt B. It's robots or other processes that automate the encryption process. But again, the forensic experts that have been brought on to date have not found forensic evidence that indicates data left our system. Thank you.
Thank you, Cyrus. We're now going to move on to our media partners joining us virtually. First up is Lisa Pileski from CHML. Lisa, if you have a question, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm just wondering, in terms of what you're prioritizing getting back online that isn't running right now, what is the highest priority, and how quickly would you be getting to, if you can say, would you be getting to resolving those more high priority things that have been offline?
Thanks for the question, Lisa. And because this is very operational in nature, I'm going to ask the city manager, who is literally day in and day out making those calls. So.
Thank you. So right now we're focused on getting a number of things up and running, and it's been described to me like an assembly line of activities where you contain and then you look at the data and you make sure that it's safe and secure, and then you put it in a safe environment. So we can do multiple things at one time, as you've seen. But in terms of how we prioritize, of course, initially we want to make sure that life safety, all of those things are working properly. So fire and paramedics, and we support police services, but in that way we want to make sure that those things are up and running first, and you will see by the list that I gave earlier that those things are functioning. We want to make sure that anything related to delivering safe water is working properly. So the things that we're shifted to now, because I've given you a long list earlier of all the things that are working, some of the areas are things to help us make sure that financial payments are made to vendors, to make sure that support payments are made and staff are paid, some of those things. As well, one of the next focus areas will be on taxes. We know that people want to be able to pay their taxes on time and appropriately through pre-authorized payments, and so we're focused on things like that. So there's a whole list. There are over 70 services that we provide and hundreds of systems that support that, and so we're taking it one step at a time to make sure that each one of them is recovered safely and securely.
Lisa, if you have a follow-up question, you can go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cold here. So just wondering, what is the city kind of learning from this that really kind of led to this happening? I mean, what is going to change going forward that will prevent something like this happening again? Because, I mean, obviously something was missing, some kind of preventative device was missing. So I'm just wondering, what are you going to be able to do differently now that this has happened?
So, Lisa, I want to first say that this is happening to lots of different entities, municipalities, businesses, hospitals. I mean, it's happening in a lot of places. So I don't know that there's one particular thing that made us vulnerable. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but what I can promise you is that we are looking at all of the pieces, and we will identify if there's something that we need to do better. And as we're rebuilding, as was described by both the city manager and our chief digital officer, as we're doing that rebuilding, we are making our systems stronger. So there's always room for improvement. I think there's no doubt about that. But there's these cyber criminals are they're pretty sophisticated. Like, this is pretty hardcore stuff that's happening here in Hamilton, and it's not pretty. It's pretty terrible, is what it is. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of organizations are having that look now, because this kind of web-based criminal activity, this cyber criminal activity, seems to be increasing. It seems to be those criminals are getting more and more and more sophisticated. And so we are doing our best at this point, and we'll be doing our best going forward. But they are miles ahead, I would say, of most organizations, because that's what they do day in and day out. They try to steal information and then hold it for ransom. But I will hand it over to somebody else if they want to, further speak to this.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll largely repeat what the mayor has said in terms of this is a problem that so many of us are faced with now. We have cyber criminals who are very sophisticated, and we see increasing attacks each and every day. And while no system is going to be foolproof, we have to take every measure possible to make sure that we are as resilient as we can be, and to make sure this doesn't happen again. So I don't have all of the answers for you now, but what I can commit to you is we have a great great team with experts that we've engaged, helping us through this, not only to restore and recover, but to rebuild and rebuild better. So I have no doubt that at the end of this, Hamilton is going to be one of the most sophisticated organizations from a cybersecurity protection perspective, and we are going to come out stronger and more modernized and more digitized and safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Marnie. We'll now go to Andrew Collins, freelance reporter. Andrew, if you have a question, you can go ahead.
The city obviously reiterated that multiple times that we haven't paid the ransom, but how much is this going to cost the city? We're talking about instability with the Presto system and fare collection, and just sort of recovering taxes and property taxes. Do we know a rough number plus the cyber firms that we had to hire to work on the system?
I don't think we have that information at this time, but it ain't going to be cheap. I mean, that's the bottom line. It ain't going to be cheap. And we don't want to do things on the cheap. We want to make sure we're doing what we need to do to protect our city, to protect the interests of our residents. And when the time comes that we've completed all of that work, absolutely, it's something that we are going to be able to, tally up, if you will, to provide the specifics. I don't think we're there yet, and as I said, there's and as Marnie has said, City Manager Clucky has said, Chief Digital Officer Tirani has said, we're not at the end. We're still at the beginning of doing a lot more work on our systems, and so unless somebody has something else to say, I think that's all we can say at this point in time.
Andrew, if you have a follow-up, you can go ahead. Andrew, do you have a follow-up question?
Nope, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next, we'll go to John Best from the Bay Observer. John, if you have a question, please go ahead.
I do, thank you. As you're rebuilding the system, I'm wondering do you have access to all of the information? I assume you're pulling it out of backup, and I'm just wondering how much of a gap there was between the last backup and the time that the ransomware hit.
Good question, John. I don't have the answer myself, and I'm not sure if we have specifics, maybe Cyrus. There are multiple systems, and so I would imagine that there are multiple kind of situations that we're facing in terms of those various systems. But thanks for the question, John. I'll turn it over to Cyrus.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question. There we go. I think it's a complex question. We are looking obviously at restoring from points that we know are safe to restore from, and doing that sort of balancing act between restore point and ensuring that data that's recovered is safe for us to use and sanitize and goes through a forensic process to identify that it's secure. In some cases it's going to be very easy and day of, day before data recovery, and for some other systems it may not be as simple as doing that. So it'll depend on each system individually, and as we look through our recovery processes to analyze that for each and individual system. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Cyrus. John, if you have another question, you can go ahead.
I'm good.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Next up, we have Don Mitchell from Global News Digital. Don, if you have a question, please go ahead.
Yeah, so most of the questions have been asked already for me, but I will take a stab at a couple way out ones here. So, Andrea, when you say that it's a whole hell of a lot of money, would you even give me a ballpark of what that is, like a figure, $7, $8, $9 million figure, perhaps?
You know what? I hope that you appreciate, Don, that we have to be really careful about what information is out there, because it can be used against us by this group of bad actors, or by copycats, or by any other that might be out there. As has been mentioned, this kind of thing continues to happen, and it's happening at increasing frequencies with a plethora of various organizations across the spectrum, and so we have to be really careful about the specifics in that regard. I wish I could, but at this point it's a risk, and we have to protect the city and the residents here.
Fair enough. Only other question I have is just, we did talk to some of the unions about the overtime pay issue, and a couple of them said, well, they should be doing it manually. So I'm just wondering if Marnie can say whether, that is the workaround for it, that these checks to clients and, workers are being done on a manual basis?
No, thanks for that question, Donna. And I just want to say, as the mayor, myself, the entire council, nobody wants to see people going without pay. Everybody realizes times are tough. The ability to make ends meet is stretched right now for people. So this has definitely been a priority for us. And I'm going to ask City Manager Clucky to provide further information. But my understanding, just kind of again from where I'm sitting, is that the first pay cycle was problematic, and we're heading into the next pay cycle, and it should be fixed. But I'll get City Manager Clucky to confirm that.
Yes, this is so important to us. We know that people rely on their pays as they should, and so that is a priority, as is getting our vendors paid as well. So to answer your specific question, it is going a little bit old school again, and so many of our systems were, as you can imagine, business applications for time and attendance, and so people would enter in the data into one of the systems, and those online systems are down. So what we needed to do was get some of those things recorded manually and then entered, and that's why there's a bit of a delay, because we could take information from last pays to pay people initially, in terms of their expectation, but in terms of overtime and standby pay, we had to get some data in so we could get data out and get people paid. And we are ready now for March 29th pay to ensure that overtime and standby pay is paid. Now, I don't expect it to be perfect, to be honest, because we're trying something new right now, doing something more manual, but we're going to make every effort to get people paid accurately and timely and correct any inaccuracies as soon as we can.
Thank you, City Manager Clucky. We'll now move on to Bobby Herstova from CBC Hamilton. Bobby, if you have a question, please go ahead.
I do. Thank you very much. Hopefully everyone is breathing a little easier over there, though it sounds like there's still a lot of work to be done. My first question is, if you just kind of think about all the different systems you have and what was affected, can you give me a sense of how much, like 30%, 40%, how much of the systems were actually affected by this cyber attack?
Do you have that, Cyrus?
I would say at this point in time, we wouldn't be releasing information because that's proprietary, and we want to maintain our ability to respond in an accurate manner.
All right, so thank you for the question, Bobby. Just asking our kind of digital officer here and our city manager, they're concerned about putting out that kind of information because it might put us at greater risk and might be putting us in a weaker position, and that's definitely not what we want to do, but I'll have the city manager respond.
Thank you. And that's absolutely true. In addition to that, though, it takes time to get good information, and so it will take us time to assess and determine the specific impact. And when we have that, and when we're able to, we'll share that too. But at this point, we've got a lot of systems and a lot of information that we're going through, so we just need the time to get that good information and analyze it and bring it forward.
Bobby, follow-up?
Sure thing. My other question, and hopefully we'll get more than just the one question, one follow-up, but my other question is, I understand that firefighters, for example, I've heard that they've been using Google Maps to get around the city and using their own data on their own phones because of this cyber attack. Is that happening to firefighters and other first responders like paramedics and police? And can you just tell me more about that?
Thanks for that question, Bobby. I don't know the day-to-day details of how those operations are running. Certainly we have the fire chief here. We have some representative from the paramedics as well, and we have police here as well. Is there anything that anybody can share in terms of that? So we'll ask Chief Cunliffe to come forward and respond. Fire chief, please. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Madam Mayor. And so as part of our contingency processes, we do provide the staff with old-fashioned, we have map books that are in all of the fire trucks. And we provide them with map numbers and cross streets so that they can do it the old-fashioned way. We also have cell phones in our fire trucks, which will provide them some access to Google Maps. But yeah, I think one of the things that's happening, and I want to thank our firefighters for everything that they do and all the members of the Hamilton Fire Department, because this is an all-hands incident. So for them to take the initiative that when they see fit that they need to use their cell phone to look up an address, not that they don't have the ability to do that with what we're providing, but I think that just shows the citizens of this city that the employees of the city are prepared to do what they need to do to keep them safe.
Thank you, Chief Cunliffe. We'll now go to David Ritchie, freelance reporter. David, if you have a question, you can go ahead.
I'm fine, thank you for the opportunity, though.
Thank you so much, David. We'll now go to Alistair McNamara from Durham Radio News. Alistair, if you have a question, you can go ahead. Alistair, are you there? Okay, we'll move along. What we're going to do now is we're going to do one more round of questions with one each. We're going to start with our media partners who are joining us virtually, and then we'll move to those in person. So we'll go around one more time. Lisa Pulowski from 900 CHML. If you have another question, you can go ahead.
I'm okay. Thank you so much for all your responses. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Lisa. We'll then go to Andrew Collins. Andrew, if you have a question, you can go ahead.
We have all members here from Hamilton Fire, Hamilton Police, and Hamilton Paramedics. What is the toll on those services? How has the hack affected them in total?
Can we have the Deputy Chief of Police, Ryan Diodati, maybe answer from the police perspective? And then we'll have Russell Crocker from the paramedics.
Sorry, if you can just repeat the question.
How has the online hack affected the emergency services for police, fire, and paramedics?
I can speak for police services. I can tell you that the online cyber attack has had no effect on our infrastructure. Our computer-aided dispatch center and our mapping systems have worked as described and as prescribed throughout the event.
Thanks, Deputy Chief. Thanks, Russ. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. From the Hamilton Paramedic Service perspective, since the cyber attack, we put a priority really on our staffing and remaining or keeping response capability. What I'm happy to indicate is that we have maintained our response capability. Residents should feel safe that we are able to respond to calls. And really, when it comes to responding to calls, staffing has been our priority. We do have a staffing plan in place to maintain that, which includes overtime, but also other levers that include temporary full-time, part-time capability, as well as float paramedics. So through the cyber event itself, we are putting an effort on staffing, which we've been able to maintain. Everybody is safe. And secondary to that, all of our systems, once again, either managed within the city, are safe, and there's been no FI information that has been shared.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. John Bass from the Bay Observer. If you have a question, you can go ahead. Okay, moving along. Don Mitchell from Global News Digital. If you have a question, you can go ahead.
Yeah, just one quick follow-up on the detail with Hamilton Paramedics is that can you tell me what the dispatch system is run provincially? Is that not correct? And is that why you're not affected, or can you elaborate on how you're not affected?
Deputy Chief?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you for the question. That is correct. Our dispatch center is run by the Ministry of Health, and as a result of that, their systems have not been affected. They've taken the necessary steps to protect their systems in coordination with the City of Hamilton. So we're happy to say that none of our dispatch functions have been affected.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. We'll now go back to Bobby Herstova from CBC Hamilton. Bobby, if you have a question, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. I do have a couple others. in the list of things that is working and functioning, we heard about long-term care homes are operating. We heard traffic lights. Can you tell us what isn't working, what is not working in those things? Because I assume if you brought them up, it's because there's some sort of problem with them. Is there something that's impacting long-term care home service or traffic?
I can ask City Manager Clucky to respond to that. I think the point she was making is for people to rest assured that those services are being delivered, and they're being delivered in a way that people can be confident in those services. But if you wanted to go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, so many services are up and running, and so I wanted to assure the public that all of those core services that they rely on daily are still available to them. There are some modifications that we're seeing. From an impact perspective, the biggest impact is the IT online tools. So some of the challenges that we're still facing is phone lines for individual staff members are not working. So we have the customer contact center in place so that residents can call in there and be redirected, or we have emails set up in those circumstances. Other online tools like mapping tools we're working to bring online. Some of the services at the library we're still working to bring online, although I'm happy to report that the Wi-Fi in most of the branches is now working so that the public can come in and use some of those services. So largely it's a lot of those back-end things that we rely on, and all of the core services are still being maintained and delivered each day.
Thank you, City Manager Clucky. We'll now move to David Ritchie. David, if you have a question, you can go ahead.
Still no questions at this time, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll go to Alistair McNamara one more time to see if there's any questions. Okay, we'll now move back to our in-person media partners. Again, if I could ask that you project your voice so the folks online could hear, that would be appreciated. Tevia Morrow from the Hamilton Spectator, please go ahead.
Oh, thanks very much. I just wanted to ask about a little bit more of how this is affecting staff throughout the city. We have these indications here and there, just sort of, right around the edges of staff not being able to access files. For example, the planning department has said, can you please resend some of those planning applications or development applications? But we've not really had an explanation or a confirmation outright that yes, staff can't access certain reports, certain other things that the
like historic information, for example, things like that,
or anything that they might rely on to get from consultants or people you do business with, and the reports that are on agendas, for example. Mm-hmm. Can you just give us a sense of that impact and why can't staff access? Is it by design because you've tried to isolate the problem and say disconnect? Is that the issue, or is it because of what the hack?
No, it's a good question. I appreciate it. Did you want to take that one, Marnie, or Cyrus can too?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'll start, and maybe Director Tarani can assist us with the answer. So because some of the files are encrypted, it is difficult to access things on some of our drives. It is difficult to access phone lines and things of that nature. In many cases, we're able to find them through other mechanisms. So, for example, the emails are working, and so if you have data on your emails, you can access it there. But in other circumstances where that doesn't exist, where you might go to your server, where you file things, we don't have access to all of those. So that's being reviewed, and our team of experts is working hard to get that up online, but that is some of the impact that we're seeing.
Thank you, City Manager. Oh, sorry. Please go ahead, City Manager.
That's okay. I'm just going to look and see if Director Tarani wants to add to that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Clucky. We'll now go to Al Sweetie from CHCH News.
Hi. I wonder if I could ask a question of Deputy Chief Diodati here.
Absolutely.
Have the police launched a criminal investigation into this? And is there anything you can tell us about that?
Certainly, thank you. Yes, on March 1st, the Hamilton Police commenced the criminal investigation, and we immediately made contact with our provincial, our federal, and our international law enforcement partners. I can tell you at this time, as has already been mentioned by the mayor and the city manager, these are sophisticated criminals. These types of investigations are quite complex. We continue to gather the evidence, and we will continue to follow that evidence.
So you'd be working with the OPP and the RCMP with specialists from those departments?
Absolutely. We are the police of jurisdiction, so we are the lead agency.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. We're now going to go to Scott Radley. Scott, if you have a question, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for getting me on one of my questions. That was a good one. One last thing, you've talked a lot about money. You said it's, how much it's going to cost and everything. What does the insurance, the cyber hack, whatever we call it, insurance, cover? I mean, I know you're saying you're not paying a ransom, but does it cover hiring the agency, the experts to come in? Does it hire? What does that get us out of having to pay out of the city's taxpayers' pockets?
Well, we have a policy, as you would know. It does cover this kind of incident, but there are also, like any other insurance company, there are also, hoops that you have to go through and things that you have to provide. I don't have the detail on that. I don't know whether the city manager does either, but we also have to be careful about how we talk about that as well in public. And I know it's frustrating. Look, it's frustrating for all of us, and it's really, really tough. But what we don't want to do is put information out there that makes us more vulnerable, because that would be irresponsible, frankly. And I know that is that's a sore spot for folks. I get that. And I wish I could just kind of have every answer and just put it all out into the metaverse, but we don't want to put our city at any more risk.
Thank you, Mayor Horvath. So that concludes today's media availability. If members of the media joining us virtually have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to mediarelations@hamilton.ca, where our team will connect with you regarding the additional information you're looking for. Thank you all so much for joining us, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks, team, for being here.